Hello and happy, beautiful day to you. Welcome back. Welcome to today's quick IQ podcast episode. And of course, on these IQ episodes, we talk about insights and questions. And today is a really interesting and yet profound insight. And I got to be honest with you. You may notice if you listen regularly, today's podcast episode is 2 days late. And there's a reason for that. And not a very good reason, but there's a reason for that, is that I had my own resistance to doing today's podcast because I know that there are people with a lot of emotions regarding today's topic, which of course is kind of the point. You know, the more we have emotions, especially stored up emotions in the subconscious mind about something, about anything, it can affect your health and it can affect your life. And so as we talk about today's topic, I want you to invite you to notice what emotions come up for you and genuinely clear them, because I can tell you what we're going to talk about. I can't tell you how I see so many people who are being impacted by these emotions, and yet they don't even realize it. And there's a growing number of people that they're impacting. So I'm seeing more of it, not less of it. And so that's where we're going. Now, the topic, it has to do with COVID. So if you listen to the last podcast episode with our beautiful volunteer, you'll recall with Senya that part of what was going on with her had to do with a COVID relationship. But as you probably know, people have so many different emotions towards COVID: hurt, upset, resentment, love, disconnect, hate, disconnect with family, arguing with all of the vaccine, the government. I mean, there are so many different emotions regarding COVID that, of uncertainty, when suddenly everything was in lockdown and people didn't know what to do and they felt like the rug got pulled out from underneath them. I mean, I would say that there are so many different emotions, and that's why I wanted to invite you that as we're talking about this, to really notice what is coming up for you, or maybe any emotions you have stored up about it, because I invite you to make sure to get rid of them, because I'm seeing them come up just like with the last podcast episode. She had a relationship during that time. Now, her wounding, of course, a beautiful, beautiful being, was towards relationships. And so that was part of what was already going on for her already, but that triggered event impacted it. And, if you think about my situation personally, when I healed myself from wheelchair, walker, cane, when we stop and think about it, my event that affected me was from 9/11. The events that happened from September 11th, but the pattern started in childhood. And so what happened is, in the events of 9/11, added a bunch of emotion to the patterns that I already had there. And that is part of what I'm seeing with COVID in so many different ways. Again, whether it's because people were locked down in a relationship, and then when lockdown came, when everything opened up, then suddenly they felt ripped apart from that relationship. Or people ended up in relationships they didn't intend to be in, so then they were trying to figure out how to get out of that. Or some people, they spent so much more time with their spouse than they intended, and being locked in a smaller space with children and everything was the end of their relationship. I mean, just so many different things, or the government or whatnot. And so, again, one insight from this is to really be careful about what emotions came up for you. And I invite you to clear them, even proactively, even if they're not affecting you yet. And by the way, if somebody had asked me if the events from 9/11 impacted me, I would have said no. All I cared about was other people. And just, I didn't realize I had survivor's guilt and things going on at a deeper level. And so I'd invite you to just kind of tune in and check in and see what's going on for you. Now, another thing that is also concerning that I'm seeing is, the power of belief. If you're here, the power of belief, but it can be really tricky. It's not as straightforward. And a simple way to think about that is like this, is that if somebody takes a placebo and they believe that it can help them, that positive expectation can help with symptoms, but it usually doesn't result in healing, like in physical healing. It helps with symptoms. However, on the opposite side, if somebody believes something negative is going to happen, it can affect them really bad. For example, there's even a well-known story of a man who was misdiagnosed with cancer. He died, And then they did an autopsy, and it turns out he was misdiagnosed. But he died, and he thought he had cancer. Now, you might say, well, wait a second, what is the difference? Why do positive beliefs not heal you all the way, but negative beliefs can create illness and whatnot? Think about it like this. Let's say somebody believes something good is going to happen. Does that really change their emotional state all of the way? Does it change their subconscious mind all of the way? Maybe, maybe not. For a lot of people, they might be excited, but then they have this other stress going on or this other thing. And so even though it's a positive belief, there are other things going on. Or if you think about episode number 271 on the podcast, I worked with a beautiful volunteer, Kelly. She released her pain, and she had everything was great in her life. Amazing, like her dream life. And she felt guilty for it. And she felt like she was getting away with something. And so even though she was positive and excited and all of these things, she had that underlying feeling. And so positive belief can be powerful. And the the placebo shows that we can have positive symptoms, but really typically to heal all the way, we need to change those specific things. We need to really change those specifically what's going on. So even with that on episode 271 with Kelly, that's exactly what I did, is I helped her to identify that she had feelings of guilt and feeling like she was getting away with something or doing something wrong. And so as she shifted those, her pain went away. So she went from feeling good to then feeling really good because she addressed those underlying things. Okay? Now, with the specifics, keeping with the specifics, here we go. So if you think about a negative belief, now, if somebody has a belief that something negative is going to happen, like, using the story of the man who was diagnosed with quote unquote cancer, or is misdiagnosed with cancer, if he has that belief, now he's been misdiagnosed with cancer, could that change his emotional state from going from positive to negative? Absolutely. Absolutely. So notice his entire emotional state could crush down, which it of course did. In which case, it affected his health and he ended up dying. Okay, so we can see the reason that sometimes negative beliefs can have a bigger impact is because the negative stress and the stress and the negative effects of that on the physical body. Whereas a positive belief is great, but it doesn't mean that a person gets rid of the negative emotions also. They need to get rid of those too. So point being, I know it's a bit specific, but let's be honest. If you think about a computer is very specific. You want it to do what you want it to do, you have to type in the right things. And our minds are more advanced than a computer. And so it is specific, but that's the point. And so I would also say, be cautious or be careful of the beliefs that you have towards COVID also, because some people have beliefs towards COVID that are holding them back. Some people have beliefs towards the vaccine that are making them sick. And I've seen that. And I've worked with people with the vaccine. And by the way, I'm going to tell you, I'm a bit concerned about what that's going to look like. And this is the reason why. Is that back to back, I've worked with people who thought they were having some type of symptom from the vaccine. And it was connected to some type of emotional event. And even if you look at, there was episode number 84 on the podcast. And on that one, I worked with a beautiful volunteer who had physical pain, and she had symptoms going on from the vaccine. And yet where she thought was from the vaccine, but it was from an emotion. Now, every single person that I've worked with long COVID or even with the vaccine, there was some type of emotional component. And so that's one thing that I'm concerned about, is a lot of the things that have happened during COVID, because there's so many emotions, are then getting linked up. That has to be COVID or the vaccine. And so people think there's nothing they can do, or they're stuck. And so again, I want to invite you to clear any emotions you have during that time. Now there's another concern, and it's this. It's the nocebo. So if somebody takes a pill with a nocebo, so there's a placebo where somebody takes a pill and they get positive benefits. There's some type of improvement in their symptoms, which don't usually result in healing, but improvement in their symptoms. But if they take the nocebo, the negative, and they're told that it could cause a rash, or it could cause problems, or headaches, or whatever it is, with the nocebo, they take the pill, and they're told it can have negative effects, and it can. And so, interestingly enough, by the way, even people who have gotten the fake vaccine, or they didn't even get the vaccine, but they were told it was the vaccine, and they were told they got it, there's something like more than 30% of people have negative effects. And they didn't even take the vaccine. They just had a fake one. And it's because there's so much charge. Now imagine for a moment in our culture, if everybody who took the vaccine, if there's more and more and more charge about, oh, the vaccine is imagine what nocebo effects are going to happen in our world. So, and by the way, I know the vaccine, this is in the very beginning, I'm just going to pause for a second. In the very beginning, I told you that I had some resistance towards doing this episode. And this is the reason why. I know that so many people are charged in one way or another about the vaccine. And the thing of it is if you're here right now, my hope is that your goal is just about healing for everybody, happiness for everybody, and not the political part of it, not the victim part of it, not the anger part of it, not the resentment part of it, but the healing part of it. And that's really what I want to talk about, because this is the thing. If somebody takes a placebo, a fake pill, and they're told it can have positive benefits, they happen for a while, and then they usually wear off. But they can be re-upped, meaning that if they're told more and more that it can really have, if they're reinforced again and reinforced again that it can have positive benefits, you know what happens? They come back. It can be re-upped. It can be re-upped. And so when you stop and think about it for a moment, if somebody also takes that fake pill and they're told there can be negative side effects. Now let's say they're told over and over and over there can be negative side effects, and it keeps getting re-upped, and it keeps getting re-upped, and it keeps getting re-upped. How long till they get out of that cycle? Well, they don't. So my concern is this. As you hear more and more people still talking about releasing information about the vaccine and the negative, and my concern is that every person who's ever taken the vaccine, which is a lot of people, is going to hear more and more of this and start developing more and more symptoms. Even if it wouldn't be a negative impact to them, but hear more and more and more of this. And much like the man who died when he was misdiagnosed with cancer, even though he didn't have it, he was told he was going to die, so he did. And so if all these people that have taken the vaccine start hearing more and more and more and more and more negative broadcasting to their minds, what that's going to look like. Not good. Not good for people living for happy and healthy and good. And sometimes what I've seen is people who are anti-vaxxers, their friends and family who already have the vaccine. The anti-vaxxers are like, and again, this is just whomever. I'm neutral here. I'm not on either side. I'm just on the side that says promoting health. And so, but somebody who's a quote unquote anti-vaxxer might tell somebody who quote unquote got a vaccine, hey, look at all of this negative stuff. What are they doing to that person? Well, hopefully they're not giving them the nocebo effect, because that's definitely what can happen. Is the more somebody who gets the vaccine is inundated by, hey, the vaccine could do this to you and this to you and this to you, the more that can happen. And again, remember, over 30% of people in some of these studies who got a fake vaccine, didn't even get the vaccine, but were told they got it, had negative symptoms. So we really want to be careful. And so that's the thought about it, is just from every different angle, the thing that matters the most. I mean, imagine if we look around this world and every single person is healthy and happy and loved and loving and thriving. That would be amazing for all of us. I mean, could you imagine our world like that? That would be incredible. And so food for thought. Just again, I know that this topic can have a lot of charge for people. My hope is that you take this in a great way, in a positive way, and you use this to better your life. That maybe as I'm talking about all of this, like as we're going through this, you think, oh, these are some emotions that I have towards COVID. Let me get rid of it. Because the thing of it is, what matters the most is tomorrow, today, tomorrow, the next day. What is your future like? That's what matters the most. And so when we can really genuinely look at things from the past that may have happened, and maybe there was the upset or hurt, or maybe we were wronged, or whatever it is. I know I've been through my fair share of stuff. Most of us have at some point, yada, yada. But when we can look at it and genuinely let it go and realize that what matters the most is our health, our happiness, our life, today, tomorrow, the next day, our future. Making this life the best that we can be, living it to its fullest, being happy, being healthy. That's what matters the most. And so that's what I want to invite you to take from this, is that if you have any emotion towards any of this stuff, that you really write it down, look at it, release it, let it go completely. Be willing to genuinely change you for you and for the betterment of all of us, Be willing to make that shift energetically and emotionally. So just food for thought on that. And by the way, of course, if you're somebody who did get the vaccine, food for thought and warning is make sure not to inundate your mind with negative things about the vaccine, because I've seen people doing that, and then they got it, and then they're stressed out, and then they're stressed, and they're reading this, and they're reading that. Well, of course they're going to end up with some type of symptoms or problem. You want to know what's fascinating is this. If you've ever heard, there's something called medical student's disease, where even doctors who are going through medical school, they go through medical school, they start reading about all these diseases, and they start developing the symptoms or feeling like they're developing them. So think about that for a moment. So if even doctors, it's well known, you can look it up, we'll leave a link in the show notes for you, but it's medical students disease. And it's exactly that. Like, as doctors are going through medical school, they literally can start developing some of the symptoms just by reading a bunch of things. So if you got the vaccine, I invite you to not go through and read a bunch of negative literature on all of these things, because it's not going to be good for your health, your happiness, your life. And so just food for thought. Again, I know this is a sensitive topic for some people, and I hope that it becomes a not sensitive topic, that you just let it go and move on and realize, what matters the most today, tomorrow, the next day is your happiness, your health, your life, and love, connection, enjoying, celebrating, living life to its fullest. So that's today's quick IQ episode, and I want to ask you to please do hit the share button on it. Share it with somebody you love, somebody you care about, or somebody you don't even know, because the more that every single person in our world is healthy and happy and loved and loving, the better this world is for all of us. And so please do hit the share button, and please do have an incredible, wonderful rest of your day. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. We'll see you here.